Okay, fine. So let us define a precise agenda for the day. So we plan to cover the following four things. First thing is there will be a PPT. Second is basics of relevant measuring instruments, specifically DMM and DSO, that is digital storage oscilloscope. Third is I will show you pictures of the PE kits which are available in lab. And last is I will show to you what is called as a ready reference sheet. Okay, fine. So I made a PPT for introduction to power electronics practicals, just like we recently discussed about the introduction to P theory. So I have given one title to the slide, PE practicals. Let's lay a strong foundation to perform our very best. So you are aware about this slide because this slide has been flashed many times during the sessions. So it should be on the tip of your tongue now. So there is no need for repetition here. We know that there are two forms of electrical energy, AC and DC, and AC is called as original energy because it is generated in a three-phase form in our power stations. And there is another form called as DC. And when we convert AC energy into DC energy, the system which does this is called as a controlled rectifier or converter. If we convert DC energy into AC energy, it is called as an inverter. If we convert AC energy into AC energy, but do not change the input frequency, but change just the RMS value, then it is called as AC voltage controller or also known as AC regulator. If I convert AC energy into AC energy, but I do not change the magnitude or RMS value, but I change the input frequency, then it is called as a cycloconverter. If I convert DC energy into DC energy, in the sense I convert a fixed input DC into a variable output DC, specifically chopped DC, which we discussed in the theory session yesterday, that is called as a chopper. And the last power transformer is a resonant converter, which works on the principle of series resonance. So basically, we have 6 different power transformers in power electronics field: converter, inverter, AC voltage controller, chopper, cycloconverter and resonant converter. Amongst these 6 converters, we do not have cycloconverter in syllabus. We have only 5 out of the 6 shown on the slide. And as far as practicals are concerned, we do not have any experiment on either cycloconverter or resonant converter. So we have experiments only on converter, inverter, AC voltage controller and chopper, which is actually 4, but actually there are 5. Why? Because we have two types of converters. First is a semi converter and second is a full converter. So as we had clarified before, that the rectifier which you have known so far did convert AC energy into DC energy, but it used only diodes. So whenever only diodes are used for AC to DC conversion, that system is actually called as a rectifier, specifically uncontrolled rectifier, because diode is called as an uncontrolled device. So when we say rectifier, it actually means uncontrolled rectifier. On the other hand, if you remember that we had something called as a bridge rectifier, where 4 diodes D1 to D4 were used to convert a bidirectional AC, that is a pure AC, into a unidirectional AC, also called as pulsating DC. So if out of these 4 devices, if I replace 2 diodes with 2 SCRs, that is silicon controlled rectifiers, that same bridge rectifier now comes to be known as a semi converter. Semi means half. So half of the number of devices used in a bridge rectifier, uncontrolled rectifier, when they are replaced with controlled devices, that is SCRs, it is called as a semi converter. On the other hand, if I replace all 4 diodes with 4 SCRs, then that circuit comes to be known as a full converter. That is why under the converter category, we have the first experiment semi converter and second experiment as full converter. So we have 1, 2, inverter 3, chopper 4 and AC voltage controller 5. So these 5 are called as performance experiments. So we do not have any lab setup for cycloconverter and resonant converter. So now I am very serious about making the kit on 3-phase inverters, the idea which I floated in yesterday's theory session at the end. So in the list of SPPU experiments, there is no experiment on 3-phase inverter 120 degrees and 120 degrees mode, but because it is a part of the syllabus, I thought why not to have a kit for oneself. So I am trying to build this kit in-house. Already I have started the work on programming of Arduino Uno, and it will be of great assistance to me if some students from the class, specifically localites, because for making the kit, for making the PCB, for connecting the various modules and testing them on breadboard, physical presence is needed. So it is best if 2 to 3 localites join me, so whenever some work has to be done, they can come to the college and work in power electronics lab. So what follows next is again the block diagram of PE system. It is not that we are revising the theory sessions, but we want to emphasize that no matter which kit is in front of you, whether it is converter, that is semi converter or full converter, chopper or inverter or AC voltage controller, you should be able to visualize the circuit diagram printed on the top of the kit as a combination of the 5 basic building blocks of any open loop PE system. I repeat that you should be able to visualize the circuit diagram of any kit as a combination of 5 basic building blocks of any PE system that is shown here. That is the input electrical energy, load, power circuit, control circuit and isolation, right? So you should be able to visualize every kit in front of you as a combination of, so you should be basically able to identify where is the input electrical energy, where is the load, where is the power circuit, where is the control circuit and where is the isolation. Only then there is a beginning of understanding of the kit. So this is the breakup of the experiments prescribed by University of Pune. It's very simple. Total there are 11 experiments. These 11 experiments are broken into 3 categories: performance, study and simulation. So there are 9 performance experiments, 1 study experiment and one simulation experiment. The performance category is again subdivided into four, namely device characteristics, triggering circuits, conversions, and SMPS. There are two experiments on device characteristics, namely VI characteristics of SCR and VI characteristics of MOSFET. Under triggering circuits category, we have synchronized UJT triggering. Under conversions category, we have 5, as I told you. One on semi-converter, second on full converter, third on AC voltage controller, fourth on chopper, and fifth on inverter. And the last under performance category is SMPS, which involves calculating the load regulation and line regulation of multiple DC voltages, namely plus 12 volt, minus 12 volt, plus 5 volt, minus 5 volt, and plus 3.3 volt. So how we can perform load regulation analysis and line regulation analysis on the different supply voltages of the SMPS, that will become more clear when I actually show you the setup. And this SMPS kit we have not purchased from the vendor who supplied us kits for device characteristics and for conversions and also for triggering circuits. We have made this kit in-house and we saved almost 4,700 rupees per kit, because we thought there is no point paying 6,500 to the vendor when the concept is very simple, right? So this is the breakup of 11 experiments prescribed by university. As far as study experiment is concerned, the title is study of over voltage and over protection circuit. It is the study of over voltage and over current protection of power devices. It's a write-up which is already there, and at the right time the write-up will be shared with you. You have to just write it with hand on rule pages, that's it. As far as simulation is concerned, we are going to use the Simulink tool within the MATLAB environment in order to perform simulation of different power electronic circuits, and I will take a separate session to teach how MATLAB Simulink can be used for power electronic circuit simulation. So now, having understood the breakup of all 11 experiments prescribed in University of Pune, we are at an important point or important step, that is general approach to every experiment. So no matter which experiment you are performing in the lab, you have to go through these 11 steps. First is view the circuit diagram printed on the kit as a generic PE system. When I say generic PE system, I mean a combination of 5 basic building blocks, that is input electrical energy, load, the power circuit between these two, control circuit, and isolation. Second, identify the 5 blocks, that is source, that is input electrical energy, power circuit, control circuit, isolation, and load. Third is, this is very important, which power processor does your system belong to? Actually, it should be amongst 4, because we are not having a kit for either cycloconverter or resonant converters. So, which power processor does your system belong to? This is important for the student to know, because once he knows that, okay, my kit is a converter, he immediately understands that converter means input is AC energy and output is DC energy. So he is very clear that because output is DC energy, I have to use a DMM as a DC voltmeter in order to take the readings. Similarly, if the student knows that it is an inverter, immediately he knows that inverter means input is DC energy and output is AC energy. So he immediately comes to know that in order to measure the output voltage or the load voltage, I have to connect my DMM as a AC voltmeter. Because student is not careful about point number 3, what happens is he is performing an experiment on inverter, but then because he has not identified what is output, he connects the DMM as a DC voltmeter at output, and he gets a 0 reading, and then he complains that, sir, the kit is not working properly. Yes, kits may not work properly at times, but this is not always the case. So first and foremost, whenever we are not getting readings as per our theory or expectations, we should first check whether have I done something wrong. So where are the points where the student can go wrong? The first place where the student can go wrong is point number 4. Check the continuity of patch cords. Patch cords are nothing but connecting wires, and these patch cords are technically known as RPG2 connectors. And you have seen these connectors in your digital electronics lab, wherein you used certain wires in order to connect the input switches to pin number 1 and 2 of IC7400, which is a quad to input TTL NAND gate. Similarly, you have used one wire to connect the pin number 3, that is output of NAND gate, to the output LEDs. So the wires which you have used in your digital lab, those wires are supposed to be used um, even for making connections on PE kits. They are called as patch cords. So if you do not check the continuity of patch cord and it is having some break inside it, then if you use it, then what will happen is you switch on the power supply and the voltage does not get applied to the gate of MOSFET at all. Similarly, if there is a break in some patch cord and if that particular cord is carrying a current, then the current will not reach the output resistor and you will get the load voltage reading as 0. We do not want anything like this to happen. That is why once you pick up a bunch of patch cords for making connections, it is mandatory to check the continuity of each and every patch cord using a DMM. How to check it, we will revise soon. Fifth important point is check the DSO probes. You know, DSO stands for Digital Storage Oscilloscope. It is also important to check the DSO probe because we cannot assume anything. Just like we cannot assume that the patch cords do not have any break inside, we cannot assume that DSO probes are working fine. It has happened many times that assuming that the DSO probe is working properly, student has used the DSO probe, and when he sees the waveforms are distorted to different degrees. So if you want to observe the different waveforms associated with any kit, then you should first make sure that the probe is working properly. And all of you being in third year, you must have surely checked the correct functioning of DSO probes. How? I will tell you later. Point number 6 is based on point number 3, that is you have already identified the power processor. Identify what kind of output you want to observe, that is voltage or current. If it is voltage, which type? As I told you yesterday, we had discussed one point called as the types of contents in any signal waveform. So you know that any signal waveform in power electronics can have an average value or an RMS value, which indicates either the DC content of the signal or the AC content of the signal. So if you have known that which is the power transformer I am experimenting on, you also know whether the output is AC or DC. Accordingly, you can set the DMM to measure either average voltage VL/AVG or RMS voltage, that is VL/RMS. Similarly, if you identify that I have to measure some current value, then again you should be clear whether I have to measure an average current or RMS current, and accordingly you have to configure the DMM. Point number 7, as per answers to point number 3 and point number 6, set the DMM to correct function using rotary dial. So what is rotary dial? You know, but still we will revise. Point number 8, use correct sockets of DMM to measure the parameter. I will elaborate on this point when we will discuss the document basics.doc. Point number 9, set the correct range to get best possible precision of values. Why this point is mentioned? Take an example that you want to find out. Now in theory we have studied that whenever any diode starts conducting, it offers an almost constant voltage drop across it, that is 0.7 volt for silicon. So if you want to verify or appreciate that yes, the on-state voltage drop of a conducting diode is 0.7 volts, If you want to find out, is it exactly 0.7 or is it little less than 0.7, say 0.695, or is it slightly above 0.7, say 0.710 or whatever. So we can always use a DMM and connect it as a DC voltmeter across the anode and cathode terminals of a diode. And at that time, if the precision is minimum, the DMM will show us a reading 0.7. What the point? But then if you want to see exactly is it slightly above 0.7 or slightly below 0.7, I can increase the precision to 2 decimal places or 3 decimal places, so that I can have readings like 0.695 or 0.710. So that is why, depending upon what parameter you want to measure, you can decide how much precision you want. That is why a student should know which are the correct sockets for measuring voltage, which are the correct sockets for measuring current, and how to shift the functionality from AC to DC voltage and vice versa, AC to DC current and vice versa, how to measure milliamperes of current, microamperes of current, or amperes of current. Everything should be crystal clear about how to use the instruments. 10th is complete the connections as per point number 1, 2. That means referring to the circuit diagram drawn by the staff on the board and you having copied it in your book. Point number 11, before you power on, verify the connections from staff member. This is reason is that if you have connected the DMM in a incorrect way, you do not end up damaging the instrument. Actually, it is not possible to damage the kit because we are performing all power electronics experiments on a low voltage. Hmm? We are performing all experiments whether input is AC or DC on low voltage levels. So there is no hazard of student getting an electric shock or the devices getting damaged, because the devices are all power devices. So they are having very high voltage blocking ability and also current carrying ability. So a short circuit occurring in the kit will never damage the power device, but it can surely damage the instrument. Okay, that is why it is important, before you power on the kit, you get your connections verified from the staff member. These are 11 points which students should take care while performing any performance experiments, any out of the 9. Okay, so these are the only 2 instruments which you are going to use while performing experiments. One is the DSO and second is DMM. So to the right, the yellow colored standing rectangle is the DMM, and I have shown the photos of 2 DSOs because we are using DSOs of 2 different makes in the lab. One is Tektronix and second is Keysight. So I assume that most of you have used the Tektronix oscilloscope in your second years, maybe analog communication, I feel, in order to observe the baseband signal and the AM envelope, etc. So mostly students are aware of Tektronix oscilloscope and how to use the different knobs for different measurements. But this Keysight DSO is new to you, but no issue. We are there to teach you. So we want students to learn both these oscilloscopes because in the exam it is not fixed that you will get a Tektronix oscilloscope or a Keysight oscilloscope. Basically, learning Keysight oscilloscope is very easy. It is nothing but old wine in a new bottle. Because you know that oscilloscopes are instruments which help us to display any signal in the time domain, specifically voltage signal. So I repeat that oscilloscope is an instrument which is primarily used for displaying voltage signals in the time domain. If you wish to display any current signal, then you have to pass it through I2E converter and then you can observe it with proper mathematical calculations. And if you want to observe the same signal in the frequency domain, then there is one facility in the DSO called as math menu, you can see here, and that basically performs an FFT on the signal, that is fast Fourier transform, and it actually transports our time domain signal into frequency domain, and thus we can see that which are the harmonics present in the signal in addition to the fundamental frequency. So yesterday, if you remember, we had wound up our theory session by discussing a topic called as sinusoidal versus non-sinusoidal waveforms, specifically the harmonic contents in sine, square and cos square wave. So actually we can appreciate that sine wave does not contain any harmonics other than fundamental frequency. Square wave contains only odd harmonics but not even harmonics, and Cauchy square wave contains only those odd harmonics which are not multiples of 3. All these things can be appreciated if we perform an FFT on sine, square and Cauchy square wave signals. So if you know how to use a tectonics oscilloscope, you just have to learn how the same things are performed using Keysight. Okay, so now another important thing which you may have to learn is a special kind of DSO probe which is necessary to be used in power electronics kits. This is technically called as an attenuation probe. You know that attenuation means reduction. Specifically, attenuation refers to reduction in amplitude. Got the point? So reduction in amplitude is called as attenuation. Now, why these kind of probes are required in power electronic systems and not in electronic devices? Because usually the output of power electronic systems, whether output is DC or AC, is usually high voltage. So the maximum possible AC voltage at the output of any power electronics kit can be as high as 230 volt RMS and up to 200 volt DC also. Now, the experiments which you performed in second year, that is on electronic devices and circuits, say the amplifier experiment, you applied 50 volts peak to peak 1 kilowatt signal at the input of a single stage common emitter RC coupled BJT amplifier, and at the output you got about 1 volt or 2 volt output, and the gain was 1 over 50 millivolts and it was 20. So all the voltages which were involved in the EDC experiments were all below 5 volts, but in power electronics it is not like that. So please understand one thing, that is DSOs are basically not designed to measure hundreds of volts of DC or hundreds of volts of RMS. So if at all we have to observe the high voltage outputs of PE systems, we have to attenuate the output, and after attenuation we apply it to the DSO. So the probes which help us attenuate the outputs of power electronic systems, so they can become acceptable to the DSOs, that is called as an attenuation probe. So basically there are many kinds of attenuation probes available in market. Probes which can attenuate our signal by a factor of 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 or 200 or even 1000 also. But in our lab we are using 10x probes. So 10x, basically when I write 10x on paper, okay, so basically when I write 10x on paper, it actually means multiplication. Okay, so basically when I write down anything like 10x, it actually means multiplication by 10 by 10. But actually here when I say 10x, it actually means x over 10. Okay, so understand one thing, that what I have shown here is actually an attenuation probe, basically a 10x probe. This is a 10x probe. Okay, so here there is a small switch. I will show you the magnified photo of this thing. So basically what it does is, now you know that this part is called as a BNC connector and these are called as a probe terminals. Out of this, you know, there's one is red, that is positive, and one is black, that is negative. So this BNC connector actually goes into the CRO. Okay, so this is the display, which is a calibrated display called as a graticule. It is calibrated, you can take measurements. Okay, these are the channels. Okay, so this is our BNC connector, and then it gets divided like this. This is plus and minus, right? So for example, if I am having some power electronics kit and it is having an output here. So for example, this output is say 50 volts DC. So now I will connect this here, I will connect this here, and if I will use the 10x facility here, understand this thing, that this will convert 50 volts into 5 volts. So the output of the PE system is 50 volts, but what enters into the CRO is 5 volts. Similarly, if I am having 230 volts RMS here, then what will go inside is 23 volts RMS. So basically attenuation is a process which does not discriminate between DC voltages or AC voltages. If it is peak to peak, it is peak to peak upon 10, peak upon 10, RMS upon 10, DC upon 10. So it does not have anything to give and take with reducing only RMS values or only peak to peak values, only DC values. It's impartial. Got the point? So because the output of PE systems is very high and it is not acceptable by the DSO, that is why we use a 10x probe. Okay. So what I will do is that I will flash to you the picture of a 10x probe. It will become more clear. So we see here, this is the 10x probe, and we can see here clearly there is a switch. So there are two positions of the slider switch, 1x and 10x. So when I have the switch towards the 1x position, the probe will not attenuate. So if the output of PE system is 50 volts DC, output is also, so 50 volts DC is the output of PE system, then 50 volts DC will enter into the oscilloscope. If I apply 230 volt RMS, then output, that is what goes inside the oscilloscope, is also 230 volt RMS. But if I keep the slider switch towards 10x position, then it will get attenuated by a factor of 10. This is what is called as an attenuator probe. Okay. So I hope it is clear why we are supposed to use 10x probes in power electronics experiments. Okay. So now this is the list of experiments. It's very clear here. So we don't need to explain much here. So the first two experiments belong to the category device characteristics, that is, which are 2 in number. This is an extra experiment here. The reason is that in semi converter, full converter, as well as in AC voltage controller, UJT based triggering is used. That means 50% of the functional part of 3.A, 3.B and 7 is UJT based triggering. That is why student needs to understand how actually UJT device generates the firing pulses for firing the SCR. That is why this is an extra experiment, triggering circuits. Now these two, so these two belong to converter category, that is AC to DC. They are 2 in number. We have inverter, which is DC to AC 1. We have chopper, DC to DC 1, and we have AC voltage controller, AC to AC. So we have 1 plus 1, 2 plus 1, 3 plus 2, 5. So basically we have 5 performance experiments, 2 device characteristics, 1 triggering circuits, and we have one more performance, that is SMPS. So totally we have 1 plus 1 2, 2 plus 1 3 plus 1 4, 4 plus 2 6, 6 plus 1 7 plus 2 9. So 9 performance are there. This is study experiment and this is simulation. This is purely on the tool. Okay, fine. So yeah, so as I said that any kit which is there in front of you, you have to identify the first block, input electrical energy, load, the power circuit in between, the control circuit, and the isolation between control circuit and power circuit. And as we know, the input electrical energy can either be a pure AC, it can be pure DC, or it can be a pulsating DC. So it can also be an impure AC or impure DC. Now as far as load is concerned, it can be simply one resistor, purely resistive load, a series connection between R and L, that is resistor inductive load, RL load, or it can be RLEB load. Okay, so R is winding resistance, L is winding inductance, and this is back EMF. So basically this is also known as motor load, or it is also called as highly inductive load. Okay, as far as control circuit is concerned, we can have many control circuits. We can have a single resistor firing the SCR, this is called as R triggering. We can also have a combination of R and C called as RC triggering. We can have a unijunction transistor to trigger, that is already there. One of the kits is entitled synchronized UJT triggering, and in the IC category we can have a 555 timer triggering a MOSFET. Okay, as far as isolation is concerned, we can have what is called as a pulse transformer, PT. So PT does not means potential transformer, it is pulse transformer. Or we can have what is called as an optocoupler, that is a combination of one LED and phototransistor, right? We can also have optocoupler. So mostly in our power electronics kits, maximally power transformer is used, and in one place I will tell you that optocoupler is used. Okay, so this is maximally used. Okay, so these are the different things. Yeah, and power devices, as I told you, depending upon whether it is a converter or inverter or chopper or AC voltage controller, we can have different devices here. We can have an SCR here, we can have a power BJT here, we can also have a power MOSFET here, depending upon which kind of kit we are having. Okay, so student has to identify all these 5 building blocks again. Yeah, so some of the slides which I am going to flash are not relevant because they are supposed to be referred by the student after the semester is over and before exams are going to come. So basically this was something which I wrote in the whiteboard in the lab last year. It is called as CROs and their notations, because we have two different makes, Keysight and Tektronix. So if you are supposed to measure the VL-AVG, that is a DC content, if it is a Keysight oscilloscope, you have to look for this particular detail on the screen, AVG CYC. If it is Tektronix, it calls the DC content as mean. If it is VLRMS, the name is AC RMS CYC, and Tektronix calls it as CYC RMS. If you want to measure the peak voltage VM, it is called with the same name by both. If you want to use cursors in order to measure the time period and hence the frequency, then you have to use what is called as X1, X2 and cursor 1, cursor 2 here. So Tektronix calls the cursors as cursor 1, cursor 2, Keysight company calls it as X1, X2. As far as probes are concerned, Keysight Technologies oscilloscope, it accepts only two versions, 1x and 10x. But in Tektronix, there is a special probe which has to be used. So one cannot use the probes for both DSOs interchangeably. It's not possible. Why? Because they are actually tailor-made. So Tectonic scope has a probe which is offering you 1x comma 20x, and Keysight offers you which is 1x and 10x. Accordingly, you have to make the changes. Now, only using a attenuator probe and putting the switch to 10x position is not going to do our job. There are problems associated with that, which I'll explain you later. Okay. Also, the steps to measure alpha, you will soon come to know when we start with SCRs that actually alpha is the firing angle of SCR. Okay. So what are the important 7 steps to accurately measure alpha while you are using DSO to do it is written here. The steps to measure firing angle. Now we come to the kits, but I am going to show the kits not from here because this PPT was made to help students revise how to actually make the connections on the kits. So this is irrelevant to you because I have shown how to make the connections. So in SCR characteristics experiment, where you have to connect the voltmeter, between which sockets you should connect the ammeter, where you have to connect the load, etc. Similarly, if we say MOSFET characteristics, here how to make the connections. If it is semi-converter, how to make the connections, where to connect the voltmeter, where to connect the DSO, where to connect the load, how to connect the control circuit to the power circuit, everything is there in this. Okay. Then for full converter, the way we have to make connections. Inverter, how to make the connections, where to connect the load, where to connect the meter. How should the readings actually come when you are performing the experiment. Chopper also connections are there. So this is basically for revising how you perform experiments on the kits during the semester. This will be shared to you eventually at the right time, right? Yeah. AC voltage controller and sample snapshots of correct waveforms and the readings on the instruments simulation. Okay. Yeah. And this is the list of part numbers which are used. So you are supposed to attach data sheets in the file. This is a future thing, but in power device category, all the kits are having virtual devices. So the different power devices which are used in all the 9 performance kits are actually enlisted here. The SCR, the power MOSFET, the TRIAC and the power diodes. Control circuit, UJT, then the driver IC, the PWM generator IC, then Zener clampers and the pull up pull down totem pole. For isolation, as I told you, in one kit we have used an opto isolator, but this opto isolator is not MCT2E, it is MCT6. So the difference is MCT2E is a single optocoupler, and when you combine two such optocouplers in a single IC, it becomes a dual optocoupler. Okay, so we have used dual optocouplers in inverter kit, and as far as pulse transformers are concerned, we have used two types, that is 1:1, that is 4502, and 1:1, 1:1:1 is 4503. Okay. Yeah, so that was all about the PowerPoint presentation. In the next 10-15 minutes, we will cover the remaining 2 points. Okay. Yeah, next important thing is the basics of instruments, that is DMM and DSO. Is very important. Even the most brilliant students, they make mistakes in connecting the DMM because not that they do not know, but they are overconfident and they are careless. So overconfidence and carelessness always leads to a loss, no matter how brilliant you are. And I have seen this practically in all my 15 years of teaching experience. Now you are seeing here, as I told you, that the patch cord is technically known as RGP2 connectors. These are simple patch cords. Now you have seen them, immediately remember you have used them in digital electronics. So these are the connecting wires which you are going to use to make different connections. Now, in order to check the continuity using DMM, now please understand one thing, that DMM has three things. Okay, so the bottom circles in two different colors, red and black, are called as sockets, and every socket has multiple functionalities or measurements associated with it. Okay, so the first aspect of a DMM is the sockets. The second aspect is this rotary dial, which actually selects different functionalities. So when you rotate the dial in clockwise or anti-clockwise directions, wherever it gets locked, that is the measurement DMM is going to perform. So it can be temperature, it can be AC or DC current, it can be milliampere AC or DC current, microampere AC or DC current, frequency. Here there are four. One is diode testing, ohm meter, capacitance measurement, and continuity checking. And then we have voltage, AC and DC. So this is called as rotary dial. Okay, and here there are some switches. These switches help us to switch between the functionality available in the sockets. So for example, if I am choosing this rightmost red socket, I see that what is written here is V, ohm, then there is a Wi-Fi kind of symbol, diode, HZ and C. So this rightmost red socket is supposed to be used for voltage measurement, resistance measurement, continuity testing, diode testing, frequency measurement and capacitance measurement. The one which is to the left of the rightmost red socket, the black one, is actually the common terminal, COM, and is also used when you want to do the temperature measurement in Celsius. To the left of the common socket is written mu A, MA and temperature. Okay, so here this socket is to be used when you know that my current is of the order of few microamperes or milliamperes, and the leftmost red socket is written 20A, that is 20 amperes. If you want to measure high current, then you have to use this socket. So simply using the correct socket is not sufficient. Along with this, the rotary dial also must be at the correct position, and after that you have to select the proper mode. So correct sockets, correct functionality and correct mode is important for using DMM flawlessly. So when do you use the select button? If suppose I want to measure voltage, then after connecting my wires in this sockets between this socket and common socket, I will rotate this dial where to the V position, and then I will select. So when I press this button repeatedly on the screen, it will show whether you are ready to measure voltage or resistance or continuity, etc. Okay, so this was a briefing. So now for voltage measurement, you know that voltage is always to be measured across a component. So it's very simple, the basics. Voltage develops across a component and current flows through the component. I repeat, voltage is developed across a component and current flows through a component. So if you want to measure the voltage across a component, naturally across means parallel or shunt. So you have to connect the voltmeter in parallel with the component. Similarly, current flows through the component. Flows means series. That is why if you want to measure the current flowing through a component, the ammeter must be connected in series with the component, which goes to show that voltmeter always in parallel with the component, ammeter always in series with the component. Okay, so voltmeter always in parallel with the component and ammeter always in series with the component, right? So here I have written three settings. The first setting called as S1 indicates that correct socket. So if you want to use the DMM as a voltmeter, then first thing you have to do is you have to select these two sockets, that is rightmost red and the next to the left, that is common, COM. Okay, so the first setting is correct sockets V comma com. The second setting is functionality. So if you simply use the correct sockets to put the patch cords, but then if the rotary dial is not in the position indicated here, it will not measure the voltage. After the second setting, the third setting is type or mode. That is, if you know I have to measure an AC voltage, then you have to repeatedly press this button select, and when in the display somewhere you see AC or DC, then your DMM is set to measure AC voltage. I repeat, then the DMM is set to measure AC voltage. If you press the select button once again, it will shift to DC voltmeter. You should have to practice this thing. Similarly, here if we see, now I am supposed to measure the voltage across a resistor. So I will connect the resistor 1. So you know that all these resistors, inductors, capacitors are all two terminal components, not three terminal components like transistors. So you have to connect one of the resistor terminals to the V socket and another to COM socket. So voltage measurement, you have to connect the voltmeter in parallel. Never connect a DMM which is configured as a voltmeter in series with the component. Remember this thing, never ever connect a DMM which is configured as a voltmeter in series with the component. Similarly, coming to current measurement, then you have to change the sockets. Which sockets you are supposed to use? You can use two sockets here. If you know that my current is in MA or mu A, then you have to use the socket that is red from the left. So the red socket second from the left is to be used for milliammeter and microammeter measurements, and common remains common. If you think that the current is high, then you are supposed to use the leftmost socket, that is a red socket. So again here the same settings are there. S1 settings, that is the correct sockets, that is MA comma com. The correct functionality is this thing, that is indicated here with a white rectangle. Okay, similarly if you want to measure microampere of current, then the rotary dial will be to mu A, and if you want to measure amperes of current, then it is exactly above the temp. Okay, so correct sockets, correct position of rotary dial, and correct mode using the switches above. So you see here there is one particular switch called as range. Okay, range. So this range actually is used for changing the precision. As I told you, if you want to see whether the on state drop of a diode is above 0.7 or it is below 0.7, you can use this range. It will change the precision in number of decimal places. So this was about using patch cords. So I must have forgotten, yes, in order to measure the continuity, what you are supposed to do is that you have to connect the patch cords, one end of the patch cord in this socket, rightmost socket, and second terminal of patch cord in this COM socket, and then you have to put the rotary dial in this position, and using the select push button switch, you have to make sure that the functionality goes to continuity mode. Yeah. So current, so DMM when configured as an ammeter should never be connected in parallel with the component. Okay, that is why we can actually write it here. Okay, you have to take utmost care. Yeah. So you know about the probes. Yeah, one important thing I told you here. Okay, this is very important. Yeah. So I told you that the power electronics components, the power electronic systems output is high. So first thing we told that if suppose this is the CRO screen and this is called as a graticule, calibrated screens are called as graticules here. Now these are the two channels. Suppose using a BNC connector you have connected it and these are power electronics kit and you have the output voltage here and you connect it here and you connect it here. Now if suppose this is 50 volt DC and you are not able to see anything like this here, what is expected is some kind of a DC level, but because the value of voltage is too high and it is not fitting in the screen, then what you do is that you have something called as voltage per division knob. Okay, so the voltage per division knob must be rotated in order to increase the value such that your waveform it will fit on the screen. So it many times happens that if the voltage input to the oscilloscope is too high and in spite of keeping the voltage per division knob in the maximum position, still the waveform does not fit into the screen. So the condition is like this. We can say that if there is some problem, wait, if the signal waveform does not fit in the CRO's display, in spite of keeping voltage per division knob in max position, we use the 10x probe. Okay, now this is only first step in displaying, but if you do not tell to the CRO that I am attenuating the signal and applying it, then we will get a wrong reading. I will give an example. So there is one setting in the CRO which is called as probe setting. And the probe settings look like 1:1, 10:1, 20:1, 50:1, so on and so forth. So by default, the probe setting is 1:1. So if the probe setting in the CR is 1:1 and you have used a 10x probe, then you know what is the problem? The problem is this. that if the probe setting is 1:1, CRO assumes that the value of voltage entering into the channel is correct or actual value. Okay, so if I keep the probe setting on CRO on 1:1, CRO assumes that the value of voltage entering into the channel is correct or actual value. Okay, so now here the output of PE system is 50 volt DC. I am applying it to a 10x probe. The output of 10x probe will now be 5 volt DC, and here my CRO has a probe setting of 1:1. So it will display 5 volt here, which is actually wrong. So what is to be done is that I am supposed to tell to the CRO that I am attenuating the signal and applying it by making the probe setting as 10:1. So when you do this, it understands that the value of voltage entering into the channel is not correct, but it has been attenuated by 10. So with a probe setting of 10:1, if this voltage enters into the CRO now, it will display as 50 volts. Got the point? Take another example that I am using 1x position of probe. Okay, but my probe setting in CRO is 10:1. So what will happen now? Take another example of RMS. Now my PE system's output is 100 volt RMS, and I'm giving it to a 1x probe. The output of 1x probe will be 100 volt RMS, and here I am keeping the probe settings in CRO as 10:1. So it is assuming that the signal which is coming inside has been attenuated by 10, so it will display 1000 volt RMS, which is actually wrong. So what we understand here, that simply using the 10x switch in CRO probe is not important, is not sufficient, but you have to use both the things. So we can summarize this as like this, that use correct attenuation of CRO probe and use correct probe settings in CRO. Okay, so both of them are important. Okay, yeah, this is what I meant actually. This is the second oscilloscope make which we are using in PE lab, that is Keysight, and as I told you, they are similar to the Tektronix. Voltage per division knobs are there. As many channels, those many knobs. Then we have Y position controls. If you want to move the waveforms, above or below each other in order to have some relative phase relationship, etc. There is a quick measure button. This is a good feature of DSOs. If in one screen, if you want to see that what is the peak to peak value, peak value, RMS value, rise time, fall time, then time period, frequency, duty cycle, everything comes in one single screen using the quick action button. This is a very good facility in the DSOs. And as I told you, I'm going to show. So as I told you that you have to do the probe testing. So you are seeing here below that, to the right side of the USB port, there is something called as probe comp demo, and there is one ground. So usually in CROs, they provide 1 volt peak to peak 1 kilohertz square wave at one of the pins there, and you can connect the red terminal of CRO there and the black terminal to the ground. And if you get a perfect 1 volts peak to peak 1 kilowatt square wave, that means the probe is working properly. Only such a probe should be used for observing the waveforms of the kits. Okay, now last but not the least, as I told you, I want to show you the kit photos of our lab. Here, yeah, so this is the top view of our first kit, that is VI characters of SCR. So as I told you, in every kit you should be able to first see the circuit diagram printed on the kit as a combination of the 5 building blocks of a PE system. That is, you have to ask a question: where is the input electrical energy applied, where is the load, where is the power circuit, where is the control circuit, and where is the isolation. Same applies to the MOSFET kit also. Where is input electrical energy applied, where is the load, where is the power circuit, where is the control circuit, and where is the isolation. Okay, so in some kits isolation is not there, theoretically not acceptable, but it works fine because the voltages associated are very low, right? So this is the circuit which is used in 1, 2, 3 in 3 kits, that is semi converter, full converter, and also AC voltage controller. Okay, so carefully see that there is a bridge rectifier constituted by the diodes D1 to D4. There is a Zener clamper, and this is that UJT, that is unijunction transistor, along with the peripheral component. So basically these 4 bridge rectifier diodes plus Zener clamper plus the UJT form what is called as a relaxation oscillator. So this relaxation oscillator is responsible for generating the firing pulses. These firing pulses, now you see here, the left half comprising of bridge rectifier, clamper, and UJT forms the control circuit, and here you are seeing the SCR here. I'll zoom it. We are seeing the SCR here. So SCR is a power device. So the presence of SCR indicates that that is a power circuit. And as we told that the control circuit's output, that is the firing pulses, should never be given directly to the control terminal of power device, because power device indicates high power side of PE system, control circuit represents the low power side. So there always should be isolation. So here the firing pulses generated at the node B1 are not directly applied to the gate of SCR, but they are applied to primary winding of pulse transformer. So pulse transformer, it offers electrical isolation and magnetic linking. Got the point? So the firing pulses generated by the relaxation oscillator are isolated using pulse transformer and then given to the gate. So this thing you will see even in other kits. You see here upper half. So upper half again is the same kit. Bridge rectifier, Zener clamper, UJT as a relaxation oscillator. And here what we see down is a power circuit. 2 SCRs, T1 and T2, 2 diodes D1 and D2. So the control circuit's output is given to a 1:1:1 pulse transformer, which has the part number 4503. So this pulse transformer will actually isolate the firing pulses and then give it to the power circuit. Okay, so again you are seeing the same kit here in full converter. Full converter also, the upper half is that. Okay, but here we have used two pulse transformers because we have to fire four SCRs T1, T2, T3 and T4. Okay, so irrespective of which kit is there in front of you, you should be able to identify the 5 building blocks of a PE system. Same thing for inverter, same thing for chopper also. Yeah, so here I was telling you that we have made this kit in-house, and the experiment says that we have to perform load regulation and line regulation on SMPS, that is switch mode power supply. So what basically I did is I just got one SMPS of a motherboard which was not working from the computer department, and then we opened the SMPS and there is something called as color coding. We can see the color coding here. I will zoom it, right? So we are seeing 5 colors here. So yellow is plus 12 volt, blue is minus 12 volt, red is plus 5 volt, white is minus 5 volts, and again orange is plus 3.3 volts. So SMPS outputs us multiple DC voltages which have an excellent load and line regulation. And as the definition goes, load regulation of any power supply is the change in its output voltage per se change in the output current. So as and when you draw more and more currents from any power supply, its output voltage goes on reducing because of its non-zero internal resistance. So to what extent the load regulation deviates from the ideal value of 0, we can actually have a setup. So what we did is that we have just pulled the wires, the 5 wires which carry 5 different DC voltages on the this thing sheet, and then because we want to draw increasing currents from every supply, what we have done is we have put 4 lamp holders on which we will put filament lamps, and all these lamp holders are connected in parallel. So if I do not put any lamp here and I switch on the SMPS, then this is called as no load condition. Why? Because no current is being drawn from the supply. Okay, and if I put one bulb, the supply is getting loaded and the ammeter will show some non-zero reading. So as and when I go on adding bulbs, more and more current is now drawn from the supply, and we see that the voltmeter which measures the value of the power supply output voltage goes on reducing. So then we have something called as no load condition and we have something called as full load condition, and there is a mathematical formula which calculates percentage load regulation. So similarly, line regulation means the variation in the value of the power supply output when there are fluctuations in the AC mains. So basically these SMPS units are designed to generate 12 volts or 5 volts when they are driven by 230 volt mains. But if the mains voltage goes above 230 volts or it goes below 200 and below 230 volts, something called as an over voltage or under voltage condition, what are the variations in the values of 12 volt, 5 volt or 3.3 volt, that we have to measure. So we had a very simple solution for this. Instead of driving the SMPS unit from the wall socket, which usually outputs a 230 volt RMS supply, now we are driving the SMPS unit from the output of a dimmer stat. You can see the dimmer stat here. So dimmer stat is connected to wall socket, so it gets 230 volt RMS, and by changing the upper rotary dial, we can actually change the output of the dimmer stat anywhere above 230 and below 230. So then if I want to find the line regulation for 12 volt supply, then I will drive the SMPS by say 230 plus 30, that is 260 volts, and see what is the variation in the 12 volt output. Similarly, I will drive it at 230 minus 30, that is 200 volts, and also I'll measure the output. So there are mathematical formulas which are there for measuring the line regulation of any power supply. Got the point? So then you can find load and line regulations for all the supplies, plus 12, minus 12, plus 5, minus 1, plus 3.3. Very simple kind of a setup. Okay. Yeah, this is it. And this is the AC regulator. Same thing as I told you, that the upper half of the circuit is nothing but synchronized UJT triggering, which is generating the firing pulses for the two SCRs T1 and T2. Okay. Last but not the least, I wanted to show there is something called as a ready reference sheet. which we have made for the students, and is actually not relevant now, but is relevant once your experiments are over. So we see here this one particular sheet is telling us the details of all the kits, right? So we have experiment name, then in this particular kit, which are the power devices used along with part numbers. In the control circuit, which are the components used along with the part numbers. Is there an isolation provided between power circuit and control circuit? It is also there. We see here in SCR characteristics and MOSFET characteristics, the isolation is absent. It is also absent in chopper kit, but it is present in all other kits like UJT triggering, semi converter, full converter, inverter, and also an AC voltage controller. So which kind of isolation is used? Whether a pulse transformer is used, whether it is 1:1 pulse transformer or 1:1:1 pulse transformer, it is given. Also, as I told you, there is only one kit which is using optocoupler MCT6 dual, while all other kits wherever isolation is used, they have used pulse transformer. The fourth column here is the load column, which actually tells us whether the load is inbuilt or we have to connect it externally. So in UJT triggering kit, I have commented that there is a 462 ohm inbuilt load. On the other hand, in semi converter and in full converter, we have to connect a 100-watt bulb externally. Okay, and the last column is measurements column. It indicates whether we have to measure the current or voltage in a particular experiment. We see as SCR characteristics, we are supposed to measure the gate threshold current IGT, latching current IL, holding current IH, and then we have to plot a graph of the anode current versus anode to cathode voltage VAK. Okay, in MOSFET, we are not supposed to measure any currents, but we are supposed to measure the voltages, gate threshold voltage VGT, because MOSFET is a voltage control device. And then similarly, in semi converter, we are supposed to measure VL AVG, and in AC voltage controller down, we are supposed to measure VL RMS. So everything in great details is given. So if you have performed the experiments in the semester sincerely, attentively, and you have done it, then this particular ready reference sheet will be of a great help to revise that. Okay, it's a full converter, so your understanding is okay, full converter is AC to DC, so I am supposed to measure the VLAVG here, and you cross check, yes, is your understanding correct? Okay, yeah. So this was all from my side. We have covered everything practically today. So I gave a presentation on introduction to PE practicals. We also learnt the basics of using a DMM for checking the continuity of patch cords, how to connect DMM correctly as a voltmeter, how to connect DMM correctly as an ammeter, and we commented that never connect voltmeter in series with component, never connect ammeter in parallel with component. We also saw that there are three different aspects to using DMM correctly. That is, first is the correct sockets, then the correct function, and the correct mode. Okay, so function is nothing but it is selected by the rotary dial. Sockets are sockets. Okay, and mode is by switches. Okay, that is there is a select switch, and we told that we can actually change the precision by using the range switch. Okay, then we also have seen the pictures, that is the top views of all the PE kits, and how in every kit the first or the starting point of the performance would be to identify the 5 building blocks of PE system in this kits. And then I shared with you a ready reference sheet which tells everything about what are the constituents of power circuit, the constituents of control circuit, whether there is isolation present or not, if present which kind of isolation is used, and then the load and also the measurements which are involved in every experiment. Okay, so now last thing I wanted to show the simulation of a semi converter using MATLAB Simulink. Just I will open MATLAB. It's here. So this is basically your last experiment, that is simulation. Okay, so this is the basic MATLAB environment, and here what I will do, I will open what is called as a model file. So you see on my desktop I have one file called as HCR. So HCR is basically a Simulink model, and all Simulink models have extensions .mdl, that is model file. So now from MATLAB, within MATLAB I will just say file, I will say open, I will go to my desktop, I will select HCR and I will say open, and it will open to me a circuit which actually looks like something what is made in Proteus, but it is not like that. Yeah, so this is my model. So we see here I have used two SCRs. This is T1 and this is T2, and I have used two diodes D1 and D2. So because the bridge configuration has two SCRs and two diodes, that is why we call this particular bridge as a semi-converter bridge or a half control bridge. So I'll not explain you because you won't understand anything because the syllabus has yet not started. So I will just click simulate, and there's an oscilloscope here. Okay, so I will just click. So all the values have come. The first value is the average content VLAVG, second is VLRMS, and I think so third is the total harmonic distortion, average RMS and THD. I will just double click the oscilloscope and I will say right click auto scale, auto scale, auto scale. Okay. Okay, so we see here I have only displayed one cycle. Okay, so this is 0, pi by 2, pi, 3 pi by 2 and 2 pi, and accordingly the first waveform is the source voltage waveform which has a peak value of 326. So we know that source voltage Vs is Vm sin omega t. Because RMS value is 230, Vm will be 230 into root 2, comes out with 325 point something. So basically it is a 325 volt peak, or a 650 volt peak to peak, or a 230 volt RMS 50 hertz single phase source. And the second waveform is the source current, the third waveform is the load voltage, and fourth is the load current. So source voltage Vs, source current Is, load voltage VL, and load current IL. Got the point? And here we are seeing that when the source voltage reaches its peak value 325 volts at pi by 2, that is 5 milliseconds, the load voltage also reaches its peak. But you see here it is like a chopped AC. So from 0 to somewhere beyond 2 milliseconds, the input is blocked from reaching the output. This is the beauty of an SCR. That is what is called as a control rectifier. Because I have fired my SCR at a particular angle, till it is fired, the SCR remains off and it keeps the load disconnected from the source. Okay. Now if I want to show more cycles, don't worry, because the input is a 50 hertz signal, the time period is 20 milliseconds. So here we can actually set that for how long I want to perform simulation. So 0.02 means 0.02 seconds or 20 milliseconds, so one cycle. If I want to display 3 cycles, then 3 cycles will occupy 60 milliseconds on the x-axis. So I will say 0.06, I will say enter, and I will say run again, and we should be able to see 3 cycles here. Okay, so I will just say auto scale, we are here. Okay, so 0, pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, 5 pi and 6 pi. So 3 cycles have been displayed, and accordingly we see the source voltage, load voltage, load source voltage, source current, load voltage and load current. And you see here that the load current is nothing but load voltage upon resistance, because we know that I is V upon R. So IL will be VL upon RL, and you see here in the kit, in the circuit, I have kept the value of R as 10 ohms. Okay, we are seeing it's 10 ohms here. So 10 ohms resistance means it current is V by 10. So if the peak value of voltage is 326 volts, then the peak value of current will be at omega t equal to pi by 2 radians. That is IL max is equal to VL max upon R equal to 326 upon 10, 32.6. We can see that here in the simulation also. Okay. So here the peak is 326 and here it is 32.6. Okay. It's somewhere between 30 and 35. Is it clear? Let me show you what happens when I change the firing angle. So I can go here and I want to keep the firing angle as 90 degrees. Go to T12 and I will say a phase delay of 5 milliseconds, 5e minus 3. Say OK, and I will go here. I will say 15 e minus 3. Save, simulate. You see here, so 0, 10 milliseconds, 20 milliseconds, 30 milliseconds, 40 milliseconds. Our interval of observation is only one cycle, 0 to 20 milliseconds. So we are seeing here that the output voltage is remaining 0 from 0 to 5 milliseconds because firing angle is 90 degrees or pi by 2 radians. So the output voltage exists only from 5 milliseconds to 10 milliseconds, that is from pi by 2 to pi in the positive half cycle. Negative half cycle, it is again remaining 0 from 10 milliseconds to 15 milliseconds, that is from pi radians to 3 pi by 2 radians, and then it is existing again from 15 milliseconds to 20 milliseconds, that is from 3 pi by 2 radians to 2 pi radians. So this is a very nice way. Now if I add an inductance here by double clicking this, I don't know why it is not double clicking. Let me so I will change the load from R to RL and I will give some inductance. I will say apply and I will say OK. I will say simulate and we can immediately see there is a change. You see here we are able to see that the load voltage is still remaining sinusoidal in nature, but the load current is no longer sinusoidal. Why? Because there is charging and discharging. So we know that inductor, it delays the voltage, so it leads to voltage lag and a current this thing. Okay, not, I am very sorry, an inductor will lead to a current lag. So inductor leads to a voltage lead and a current lag. So we are seeing that the current is lagging. So the time instant at which the load voltage is peaking, the current is not peaking at that time. So we see here that the load voltage is peaking at 3 pi by 2 radians and pi by 2 radians, but we see that the load current is peaking some time after the load voltage is peaking. Okay, so this is what is basically a simulation part. So this was all from my side as regards introduction to PE practicals. If anybody has any question to ask, then they are free to ask. Otherwise, I will stop the recording and I will take your attendance.